unpacking today's headlines. This is Souls and Liberty in Depth.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Depth, the production of Souls and Liberty, brought to you in part by MyPillow.com. As you may know, Souls and Liberty is so named because we're always looking at the spiritual reality behind all the temporal events playing out. If you fail to see and talk about the spiritual reality, then it's nothing more than a power game. Which side is exerting the most power over any other part of the culture at any other given time? Lots of conservative and patriotic sites and social media influencers talk rightly about all the events going on. On an earthly level, they're generally spot on. But they fall short because there isn't a lot of overt philosophical grounding, much less theological grounding in their discussions. The truth of all of this is there is a battle being waged for your soul. There is a devil and he's real. Simply reporting on political and cultural events, even if the reporting is correct and evil on the left is rightfully being exposed, that's not enough. The devil can and does use every weapon he can to trick souls. Look up the Garden of Eden if you need to know what I'm talking about. He's a master adjuster. As events unfold in Earth time, he adjusts. And here's the horrifying part. He is much smarter than the smartest human being who has ever lived. Just because he's a fallen angel doesn't mean that he lost his angelic powers. He merely uses them for evil now, but he is still very much in possession of them. And every angel is smarter than any human being. That's why the patriotic conservative movement, especially on social media, needs to be very cautious moving forward, because the devil can easily infiltrate it and twist it to his end, which is the destruction of souls. If we don't have the philosophy and the theology right, then he will get inside the movement, and in some notable ways, he already has. This is the perspective Souls and Liberty brings you that most others do not. Today, there's a reign of justice descending on D.C. that has the establishment very worried, as the Irish say, as nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. The early departure of FBI Director Christopher Wray, just the latest deep state asset to see the handwriting on the wall, but the reign of justice, which is, of course, intimately associated with truth, it's reaching beyond just D.C., just the Beltway. It's spilling over into corporations and universities, for example, as one by one, they publicly abandon their DEI programs. All around the country, there's a slow trickle of former Democrats joining the Republican Party. Tulsi, RFK. And even in the world of legacy Marxist media, the winds of justice are picking up speed. The hosts of Morning Joe hightailed it down to Mar-a-Lago a couple of weeks back to kiss President Trump's ring, which I understand was in his back pocket. But today, there's one case in particular we'd like to focus on, which really underscores all of this and has gone largely unnoticed. It involves the chest-thumping, a smaller media outlet, but still very Marxist propaganda being delivered by it. It's called ProPublica, yet another lefty site that down at the bottom posts the rather embarrassing to them slogan, "Journalism that holds power to account." Unless, of course, it's the power wielded by fellow Marxists in government, then, not quite so much. Anyway, earlier this week, ProPublica editor Jess Eisinger posted a tweet about just how honest and upholding of high journalistic standards his organization was and is. It revolved around a story they were working on to shame Trump's Secretary of Defense nominee, Pete Hegseth, who has publicly stated that while he did not attend West Point, he did get accepted back in 1999. Intrepid, high journalistic standards editor Jess Eisinger set out to confirm that claim. Now, there's nothing wrong with that as something to fact check. Hegseth is vying to be the Secretary of Defense after all, and you wouldn't want a guy lying about West Point to become Secretary of Defense. It's what unfolded after the checking began that reveals the Marxist agenda and the one-sided bias of Eisinger, his rag of a website, and the hypocrisy of the rest of the legacy Marxist media. Here is the email to a Hegseth spokesman that started the whole story. We're going to read it here because it really does sort of sum it all up. It says, "Hi, Mr. Parlatore," that's the fellow from Hegseth's camp. "This is Justin Elliott from ProPublica. I'm reaching out with an urgent request for comment to your client, Pete Hegseth. We're moving quickly, so please let me know if you or he would like to comment as soon as possible. Our deadline is in 1 hour." This is very, very typical of they get everything they need and they force you into a corner and go ahead and run with their story. "I can be reached at," he blocked out his name and number on, as you can see. "My colleague, Robert Furcher-Terry," however you say that, CC'd, "can be reached at, blah. We're preparing a story about Mr. Hegseth's claims that he was admitted to West Point. The school told us that is not true. According to a spokesperson for the school, Mr. Hegseth did not even apply." Mr. Hegseth said on Jason Shavitz's podcast in June, quote, "I got into West Point," then later repeated the claim, "I mentioned West Point. I got in. I got into Princeton also, and I went to visit those two schools and ultimately decided on Princeton," close quote. He repeated the claim in September and again in October. Why did Mr. Hegseth say he got into West Point when that is not true? How can Mr. Hegseth be Secretary of Defense given that he has made false statements about getting into the military's most prestigious academy? Is there anything else we should know? Thank you. Best, Justin. Okay, so notice the tone of that email. It's definitely a gotcha email. After some phone calls and back and forth with the Hegseth camp, he actually sent, Pete Hegseth and his camp sent the actual proof that Pete had been accepted but did not attend West Point, like he had claimed multiple times, in the form of his acceptance letter and an accompanying certificate. You can see them both right here. We're not going to read the whole thing. This is the letter. Note the date, January 5th. It's from the military academy. My dad used to work at West Point, by the way. I've been up there quite a few times. Beautiful campus. Should be. It's paid for by taxpayer dollars. It says, this is from, notice who it's from, Daniel Christman, who is Lieutenant General of the U.S. Army Superintendent of West Point. This is the letter you get. I mean, I applied to West Point when I was back in the day, and I'm not going to say that I got in, because if I do, somebody's going to say, produce the letter. But I did get in. So this is exactly the letter. As soon as I saw this, I'm like, oh, yeah, this is it. It says, "Dear Peter, on behalf of the President and the Secretary of the Army, I am pleased to announce that the United States Military Academy has accepted you for admission." Of course, contingent upon doing well the rest of your time. When you get this letter, you also get this kind of little certificate here, as you can see on this next graphic. It's just kind of it doesn't mean anything. It's just sort of a, hey, this might be what your diploma kind of looks like. So they sent that along too. These are the things you know. It says the United States Military Academy, blah, 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 office admission to Peter Brian Hegseth, class of 2003. It's just a nice little thing that you can frame. Mom and dads can put up on the wall and, show with all their friends and everything. Look, Pete's in at West Point. So it's obviously true. So once Pete's team proved that he had been accepted, ProPublica had to drop the story. But not until Pete shamed them on X by telling the world about their plans. And here you can see it. As we said, Pete sent this out. "We understand that ProPublica, the left-wing hack group," which he's correct about, "is planning to publish a knowingly false report that I was not accepted to West Point in 1999. Here's my letter of acceptance signed by West Point Superintendent Lieutenant General Daniel Christman, U.S. Army." And he put that out. That's what made them have to pull down the story. That all happened. Then is when Isinger decided to go public himself and get on his soapbox about all their high journalistic standards. Now, it was a little bit of a long thread, but it's absolutely worth the read here because it's very important. It's what we're talking about here, about how the whole deep state works and how they present things in such a way and what they do behind the scenes to gin up something that's not true. I mean, how many of us still have our acceptance letters 20 and 30 years after the fact from getting into college? Pete just happened to have. It's pretty prestigious to actually have that letter. So, it's kind of cool. But there's a whole lot of other stuff here for media to go around like, chest thumping. Oh, look how great we are because we chased the story down, realized it wasn't, and had the integrity to get rid of the story. That's complete BS. But let's keep things in order here. So first, this is what happened. So, They check with him. They get this no twice from West Point. They send out that threatening email. We're going to run with the story now. You have to fix it right now. Well, they do fix it. Pete not only fixes it privately, they fix it publicly. They stick up the acceptance letter. And because of that, this is the thread that Jess Isinger had to put out. And let's go through it here. He says, here's a story about how journalism works. Spoiler alert. This is how we decide not to publish. We were recently looking at Pete Hegseth's different statements over the years about West Point, where he has said he was admitted. First stop, West Point. We contacted the West Point Public Affairs Office. The first spokesperson wrote on the record, according to the admission office, Hegseth had not applied for admission to the U.S. Military Academy. We called back to ask if that meant Hegseth had never been admitted, and a second spokesperson told us on the record, absolutely, 100%, because he never opened a file. When you apply at West Point or any of the military academies, Annapolis, the Naval Academy, or the Air Force Academy out in Colorado, they do what's called opening a file on you so that all your stuff starts to go in there. Even if the only thing that goes in there is just your application and that's it, and they reject you right on the spot, they still have a file on you. So back to Jess, he says, now we thought we had the makings of a significant story. But the first rule of good journalism is no surprises. You must give the subject of a potential story a fair, note the word fair, chance to respond to all of the salient facts in the story. Fair chance. It's urgent. You have to answer us in 1 hour. We're about to publish. You must answer now. That's fair? All right. Why do we do this? We want to make sure what we have is correct. We care about accuracy, BS. We aim to get both specific facts and the larger picture right. The essential part of this is contacting subjects and being intellectually honest enough to change your mind and drop a story. No, that's complete BS. They're saying you got caught and busted in what you were trying to do because Pete put the receipts up on the line. Then you had to go, oh, well, okay. No. One of the reporters called Hegseth's lawyer. The attorney made a lot of angry threats to him, but didn't deny the facts. We urged him to contact his client to make sure Hegseth understood what we were planning to write. A second Hegseth PR person then called in. He asserted Hegseth still had his letter of acceptance to West Point. We asked him to send it to us, but he just hung up. He responded with an image of the acceptance letter. We went back to West Point. They apologized. An Army spokesperson wrote, a review of our records indicates Mr. Hegseth was offered admission to West Point in 1999 but did not attend West Point. Quote, an incorrect statement involving Mr. Hegseth's admission to the United States Military Academy was released by an employee on December 10th, 2024. Upon further review of an achieved database, you love the vocabulary these people come up with, employees realized this statement was in error. Mr. Hegseth was offered acceptance to West Point as a prospective member of the class of 2003. USMA, United States Military Academy, takes this situation very seriously, and we apologize for this administrative error. Anyway, he goes on to say, of course, this is how journalism works. Wrong. That's not how journalism works. It's not even close. Twice, West Point denied that Hegseth had been accepted when asked by ProPublica. Twice. Then when Hegseth proved it, then all of a sudden West Point had a database problem. We have a recovered received database. How convenient. Within a day, Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton got ticked off about all of this, and he sent a letter to West Point's superintendent demanding an answer. Clerical error wasn't going to fly with Tom Cotton. So we're going to read the whole letter, but here's a portion of the letter that's significant. Dear Lieutenant General Gilland, he is the superintendent of West Point now, I'm concerned about reports that a U.S. military academy official has provided false information to a left-wing reporter writing a derogatory hit piece about Pete Hegseth, the nominee for Secretary of Defense. He goes on, I understand that a civilian public affairs officer, Teresa Brinkerhoff, informed a reporter that Mr. Hegseth didn't apply to West Point, as he had said publicly in the past. This statement is incorrect. Not only did Mr. Hegseth apply, but he was also accepted to the West Point class of 2003. Worse, the statement may violate Mr. Hegseth's right under the Privacy Act, blah, blah, blah. Could you please look into the matter promptly? Perhaps it's an honest mistake, though. I can't imagine what it might be, but I also can't imagine this action was authorized or known to West Point leadership. Sincerely, Tom Cotton, United States Senator, obviously from Arkansas. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. Now, there's a few things here with Cotton's letter. So you got the original story, the lust to catch Hegseth in a lie, and then who knows? You got a big question mark over West Point. Was that cooperation with them? Was it like a plausible denial? So they didn't go and look in the last drawer where they thought it might have been, so they could say no. Who knows? Who knows? But Hegseth is no lay down dude. He's going to punch you back, and you're going to punch you back, make sure you never get up again. There are a few things here, but here's the major one, which shows the sort of reign of justice attitude now permeating the culture. The accountability aspect. Cotton actually names the woman at West Point who provided the bad info to ProPublica. He says it right here. We'll repeat it. Quote, I understand that a civilian public affairs officer, Teresa Brinkerhoff, informed a reporter that Mr. Hegseth didn't apply to West Point as he had said publicly in the past. Closed quote. How did Cotton get her name? News of Senator Cotton's demand for accountability letter, from that accountability, that letter became instant talking points with the political chatter classes all over social media if you live in that world. Listen to this.
On Hegseth, Tom Cotton put out a letter that he sent to West Point today complaining about their cooperation with a negative story about Pete Hegseth. Why is that significant? Because Tom Cotton is a key senator, going to be the number 3 Republican in the new Senate. And for Tom Cotton to be out there kind of helping the nominees through is significant. Some Republicans, of course, are not on the record in support of some of the nominees, including Pete Hegseth. Some Republican senators are, even before the hearing. For Tom Cotton is out there basically saying, predicting everybody's going to be confirmed and urging Republicans implicitly in some cases and explicitly in others to be on the team, to be fighting for the nominees, to be part of that war, to go against the media, to go against critics. Pretty significant.
All right, you know that Mark Alperin would actually be talking about this. Is kind of fun. But listen, all that stuff is fine and good. The Tom Cotton thing, the response, the academy, all that and everything. But after all of that necessary background, we just brought you the story. Let's circle back to ProPublica and its pathetic response to all this. And it is a pathetic response. You don't jump on Twitter and go, oh, look, we had a story we were working on to blow somebody up and found out it wasn't true, so we didn't run it. There's much more to the story than that. And you certainly don't pound your chest saying, oh, look what a good journalist I am. Far from it. So, for example, here's questions a journalist would ask. Did he just accept the clerical error story from West Point? I mean, think what happened right there. He called up and said, hey, blah, blah, and twice he got told. I mean, he was talking to Teresa Brinkerhoff. Tom Cotton mentions her name. Who are these people he talked to who gave him bad information? When he found out the information was bad, and I'm talking about Jess Eisinger from ProPublica, when he found out, Mr. Journalist, high standards journalist, when he found out that information was wrong, it was wrong. He had been at least misdirected, if not lied to. Did he go check her out? Did he dig into Teresa Brinkerhoff's background? Did he find anything out? Do you remember? It was twice, not once, but twice. Did he go look through her social media? Did he explore her political giving record? Did he say if she's a member of the Democratic Party of that particular county where West Point is at the bend in the Hudson? Did any of that happen? Did he look into it? Did he even try to establish if there was a political motivation to her error? That's journalism, not just, hey, we're going to blast him. Oh, crap, our story fell apart, so we're not going to run it because he's actually telling the truth. Then they just drop the story and pound their chests just about how noble they were. Frankly, as a journalist, longer than Eisinger has even been alive, I'm talking about, his post is total bullshit, as the Irish would term it. Now, for more, I want to bring in Souls and Liberty fellow contributor Stephen Wynn on all of this. Stephen, if you read down in the comments under that multi-posted thread of Eisinger, he hasn't come off too well, does he?
No, he does not. The overwhelming number of respondents to his lame post, his pathetic attempt to defend himself and ProPublica, they are decidedly negative, as they should be.
They should be, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, first of all, as you said, his attempts to present his the way he responded to all of this as good journalism is just absurd. It's so transparently false. All he was doing is trying to save face professionally, and that's blatantly obvious, as you have outlined there. People recognize immediately that it's clear that his intent was to essentially launch a propagandist hit piece to sink Hegseth's nomination as Secretary of Defense, and ultimately to impede Trump's reform agenda. As you said, the initial outreach letter that he sent was just its tone was blatantly gotcha.
Yeah.
You can tell he was not interested in truth. He was interested in really just reinforcing the narrative that he had in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And get 1 hour giving someone very busy, a busy DC insider, an hour to respond is absurd. That's good journalism. I don't think so.
I mean, lots of people don't even check their email for an hour.
Well, exactly.
If you're a busy professional, whatever it is. I mean, in this case, I don't know if it went to Hegseth himself. I mean, it looked like it went to his attorneys and people in his campaign. But are they checking their email every single hour? Within the hour, and then gosh, we got to come up with a response. But I know that I laughed when I saw the word fair. You always give somebody 24 hours. And you do a follow-up. Right. You just don't send a thing and say, I'm ready to push send on the story that you suck. See, here's my finger on the button right here. We're about to say you suck. Ready? Combat what we're saying here. 3, 2, 1. Oh, there, you suck. That's not even close to fair.
No, not at all. Not at all. And you took the words out of my mouth.
Here, I'll put them back in. How's that?
Regarding him following up. Okay, so West Point says it was a clerical error, administrative error. Okay. But there's also possibility that the oversight, quote unquote oversight, could have been politically motivated. Now that is a story.
Yes,
where's ProPublica's investigation of that? That's a much bigger story. West Point historically has been an absolutely top-notch institution, and I'm sure in many, many ways it still is. However, you look around the country at all the institutions that have been infiltrated by the left over the past many years, decades, etc. It's not unreasonable to think there couldn't, the inroads may not have been, could have been made into West Point itself.
I can back up and tell you that's absolutely the case. I know a number of Army officers who have said that very thing. There was one Army officer I was talking to probably a couple of years ago who said to me that he himself was the sort of first, I guess, experimental case of having to be roommates with a biological male who was transitioning on the U.S. Department of Defense budget, their dime, to female. And this fellow was his roommate. And the fellow I was talking to, couldn't say crap about it, or he'd have been kicked out. So, woke has touched everything.
Absolutely. That's a perfect example. Another one, some of our viewers may remember in 2018, there was a scandal. A new West Point graduate student, he posted to social media a photo of himself at his graduation. He was, sporting his uniform, but he opened his outer shirt to show his undershirt. And on the shirt, it was red, and it was sporting an image of Che Guevara, the Marxist, the communist guerrilla leader. Mm-hmm. And in this social media post, he said, quote, "Communism will win." All right, now that was stunning. I remember seeing that, thinking, "Good grief, what's going on there?"
Right.
So these two examples. Those are the ones that we know about. How many do we not know about? So,
sure.
There a much deeper investigation should have been launched by ProPublica, but of course it wasn't. And so, where do you hear about all of this? Yet again, on X. X is the new media.
Yeah, it really is. X is the place where the Marxist media narrative goes to die.
Yep.
I think it's interesting. Of course, he has this whole, we'll be talking about that a little bit later, but he has this whole Blue Sky account. And, Follow me over on Blue Sky. It really is kind of, it's disheartening in a sense, but particularly for somebody like me, who, when I got into media in 1983, my first job at CBS, I'd followed media and TV and everything. I had an internship at Notre Dame my senior year at the NBC station, WNDU, which is on campus, but it was an actual NBC affiliate. I worked in the news department there as an intern. And I had watched news and all of that pretty much from maybe middle school on. So since I was about 12. So when I got into TV news, I'd already been, a fan, a relatively avid viewer. How does this work and everything for 10 years? And, there was always this big sense of the big J on your chest, like rip open your Superman shirt and J, journalism, be fair and accurate and hold truth to power, like the claims that they have now, but they claim it and that's the end of it. And so for me to look at it, I get particularly enraged. I really dedicated my career, it's a little personal here, but I dedicated my career to that, to exposing corruption. I wasn't even really that aware, to be honest with you, when I was a little cub reporter, of all these distinctions and whatever deep state stuff there may have been existent at the time and all of that. I was pro-life, and so if some Democrat was over there, I was always kind of looking at him side eyes, because I'm like, whatever he's saying, he's kind of still in favor of killing kids. So I always had that in the back of my mind. But this kind of reporting I would never have engaged in one way or the other. And because it's not reporting at that point. If you want to say, like we did at Church Militant, St. Michael's Media, and here we have a point of view. And I said the point of view at the beginning of the show. We have a point of view, and we're going to look at everything through that prism, through that point of view, and we're going to be upfront and tell you that. So you understand, okay, these guys have a Catholic/Christian point of view on the world. They look at things in terms of spiritual as well as temporal. Got it. Okay. I agree or I don't agree, or I agree most of the time or whatever. But, we don't hide our, the way we approach news and stories. These guys do. That's the part that just grinds my gears. They try to pretend they're objective, and they don't even know how to spell the word objective. They are as biased as the fires of hell are hot, because that's what they exist for. That's why they're all fleeing Twitter. I'm going to take a little break here and calm down, Stephen, and then come back when you're going to all of this much more, and also from the philosophical, theological point of view, because while all this stuff is happening certainly on the surface, below it is actually the more important stuff. Now, just as I leave here, I'm going to switch over cameras so it looks more serious, and say anything you can see what we do here is stories, how we do things, how we approach, and that sort of thing. If you'd like to contribute something, make a donation to help us keep doing what we're doing here. We look at everything from a spiritual standpoint. We look at, and by everything, we mean what's going on in the material world. And it's one thing to do sufficient reporting in the material world, like I said off the top of the show, but it's not enough. You need to be able to look at this through those, that kind of, as St. Thomas More got accused of, that, moral squint, that Christian squint, that Catholic squint. You kind of look at things and go, yes, but... So that's what we do here. We are very well versed in the events of the world, and we're also very well versed in Catholic theology and philosophy. So that's how we look at things ultimately. We're going to come right back, but in the meantime, if you'd like to give us a little donation in that, please just click on the provided donate link. We'll be right back.
Because of your overwhelming support, our $14.88 MyPillow has been one of the biggest sales in MyPillow history. I couldn't think of a better way to say thank you than to extend our wholesale pricing through Christmas. Get a classic standard MyPillow for only $14.88. Upgrade to a queen size, just $18.88. King size, only $1 more. Get my body pillows for only $29.88. And ready? Multi-use MyPillows, only $9.88. It's perfect time to stock up for Christmas gifts for everyone on your list. Go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of our wholesale pricing. Including my classic standard MyPillows, only $14.88. But that's not all. I'm so confident you're going to love our classic MyPillows that I'm going to extend my 60-day money-back guarantee until March 1st, 2025. Plus, orders over $75 ship absolutely free.
All right, welcome back. And Stephen, let's go to this now. People have caught on to the media. They caught on quite a few years ago, but now they've really caught on to it, that, it's essentially full of lies. I mean, even it's just a tiny majority of Democrats that actually believe the legacy media. And if you go to the Republicans, it's 11%. And if you go to independents, I think it's around 20%. I mean, those are abysmal. And, it's the first of the institutions, in my opinion, that needed recapturing. I wouldn't want to say mission accomplished, but mission's certainly on the way to being accomplished.
Yes, absolutely. The constant stream of lies that we have been fed over the past several years, people are waking up to it, and it's breeding such resentment. I mean, a decade ago or more, I think it was widely recognized that there was a liberal bias, a liberal slant to the media, but in the past couple of years, it has just, since basically Trump's initial election in 2016, it has totally warped into nothing but, I'm talking about legacy media here, but nothing but a propagandist mouthpiece, just full of lies. I mean, I remember I used to watch CNN regularly, even though I had a filter on. I knew that they were presenting a liberal point of view, but their headlines would at least be somewhat objective, even if their overall slant was to the left. Nowadays, I noticed shortly around the time that Trump really came on the scene the first time around, that suddenly the headlines were blatantly subjective. I mean, they were propagandist headlines. It was like looking at something out of the Soviet Union, their official government mouthpiece.
Yeah,
Pravda, exactly, right. Which is Russian for truth. Nonsense. I remember that shift, thinking this is getting crazy.
Yep.
Well, 8 years later, people, pretty much everyone, as you said, except for a handful of diehard Democrats, they recognize that the legacy media lies, and this has bred tremendous resentment. It's also opened a lot of people's eyes. There is a meme that has arisen in not too long ago on social media. That's very, very interesting. It encapsulates all of this popular resentment. Let's take a look at it here. We've got an example. Basically, it says, quote, "You don't hate the media enough." And we see that more and more every time some lie is floated online by the legacy media. Conservatives will post that phrase. They'll post memes pertaining to it. And it really just illustrates how, I mean, anyone in the right mind.
I love that meme because it's true.
Oh, I know. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, no one likes being lied to. And that's all that the legacy media does, it seems, these days.
Yeah. As you look at it, I think one of the things in the media world gives people, pull the curtain back a little bit. Almost every media outlet, certainly the big ones, meaning from big local market media, like here in Houston, for example, or the top 20, top 30 markets, all the way up to the networks and the big cables, Fox and whatever. Each of the shows always has a beginning of the day morning meeting, and they look at, hey, what are we going to do? Right there is where biases started to come in. That's where I was seeing things when I was in my little cub reporter days, and I went from Cheyenne to Duluth to Albany to eventually Detroit, where I wrapped up my career after 9 years at the CBS station at the time. In the morning meeting, you were essentially ordered, as part of your job duty, was to come in with stories. Here's a story, there's a story that you'd done some little background on, so you could present some intelligent headline and a reason why we would want to do this story. And it was kind of seen as a competitive bullpen. If you came in with weak stories day after day after day after day, or no stories, or the dog ate my homework or whatever it was, it showed you didn't really have an interest in wanting to have your stuff on the air. You were just sort of sucking off the tea to the station, and when the contracts came up, you didn't get renewed. So there's a competitive edge to it in there. There's a wanting people to know because you really believe. Forget about having to have the lead story. You really believe that the public needs to know this. For whatever your ideological reasons may have been, isn't the point. My point is you came in with a fervor to say, we need this, we need that, we need to tell the public about this, and blah, blah, blah. What was interesting is the newsroom leadership, which would usually be like the news director, the assistant news director, the senior executive producer, whatever you brought in, they had to finally, put the seal of approval on. Good stories, and meaning that we're just sort of in a balanced session, routinely got kicked out. No, we don't want to do that. Let's go interview Marjorie, who's head of Detroit Planned Parenthood, and get her perspective on how this horrible, mean Republican legislation is going to destroy lives. It was that sort of thing. So there's sort of two sides to this coin of the bias in media. One is the decision to not cover, not report, not use certain language like pro-life. You had to refer to a pro-life person as an anti-abortion person. We got physical memos on that in our boxes when they used to do things before email. And the whole thing was completely slanted. So what got excluded was part of the deal. The other side of that was, this is what we're going to promote and advance. So we're going to do these stories. We're not going to do these. Okay, I guess as a reporter in that field and a producer and anchor and all that stuff, that we would do some of these stories like, let's go talk to whoever about, why abortion's a great thing and Planned Parenthood should get $8 zillion in funding from the state budget. Okay, that's a position. Certainly don't agree with it. But as long as you go over here and you're interviewing somebody at like the pro-life pregnancy center and you're talking about them scraping for money and they're going to put people in front of you, women who'd had abortions, or decided not to have abortions and how their life was different. And here's a nice little baby and here's the women who regret it. Okay. As a reporter in the arena of journalism, I can see both those sets of stories, both stories getting on the air. Problem is they didn't. It was just this one. What happened, as you rightly say, right around the time of Donald Trump is not only was there the exclusion of balanced stories, not only was there the advancement of unbalanced stories, but then there were the lies. You simply got rid of this paradigm of, exclude good ones, keep promoting bad ones, and that was your working paradigm. That went out the window. That was bad enough, but that went out the window. Donald Trump comes in, and all of a sudden it's lie. Lie. Prostitutes were peeing on him on a bed in Moscow. Russia. One thing after another. It just never stopped. And, the constant lies, and then it extended to COVID and everything, absolutely everything, racism, it just never stopped and still hasn't really stopped. But, to your point, you don't hate the media enough. Anyway, I was like kind of pulling back the curtain and giving people an example of what things were like, how are things done in those newsrooms? That's how they're done.
Yeah. No, that's helpful. And imagine how much worse things have gotten, over the years, basically, since you were in the legacy media. The media really has declared war on the United States, on American citizens, and I think by and large, Americans are waking up to that. It's interesting because you at least as Catholics, we recognize that ultimately truth wins out. Truth wins in the end. I wonder, it seems as though the left does not share that sentiment because, all Catholics have to do, all we have to do is present truth, right? Well, if leftists were convinced of the truth of their position, why would they spend so much time, so much energy crafting lies, trying to protect their lies?
I can actually answer that question for you. Having sat in those newsrooms and those meetings, I can tell you why. The simple answer to that question is they believe their cause is right. They believe that their beliefs are correct. They cannot bear scrutiny they shouldn't undergo scrutiny simply because they're right. It's extraordinarily dogmatic inside a newsroom. It isn't a question of just, we hate Trump and this and that and everything. It's, we, number one, protect abortion. At all costs, we protect child killing. If there was a sword that legacy news media had to fall on and die, it would be that. And because in large part, lots of newsrooms have a very large lesbian influence in them. It's just saying what it is. I've barely been around an operation where there wasn't a lesbian, and this is from CBS all the way down to Detroit and everything in between. And lots of friends I have in media all over the country and everything else. Somewhere in that operating structure, there is an influential lesbian who, because it's all tied up with her sexuality, is also absolutely down with abortion, and she will not permit the other side to be talked about. That's, you want to look at this? That's what it is behind the scenes.
That's really interesting. That's for people who so many of them are atheist or agnostic, for them to be so dogmatic. That's really fascinating to think that their position shouldn't have to undergo scrutiny.
But yeah, you talk about a horrible philosophy. They just believe their position is right, but they will not allow it to be scrutinized. They will not allow it to be questioned. They'll throw up a personal thing. Here's another thing that happens in newsrooms all the time. Sorry, I'm just kind of remembering a lot of this stuff, and I haven't really sat around and thought about it that much. But you ask a question of something, and the response from the newsroom's leadership is to go out and ask people how they feel. The word "feel" popped up in memo after memo, story description after story description. You had to go ask people what they feel. And, kind of the prime stupid example of it was, I was reporting in, big cities, and at least some of them. And, horrible crime happens in some big cities. There's little children that get hit by stray bullets and drive-bys, and they die and whatever. We'd have to go ask a grieving mother, how do you feel? It was the most, we used to laugh. The reporters used to laugh when we come back in because, you made sure you got the feel question in, right? You would go out on the street and do something we would call MOS, man on the street. You just get a bunch of talking heads going, I think Trump's great. I think Joe Biden should be a saint. But it's just filler material. That's all, to break up the reporter's narration. But you would always have to ask them how you feel about this. How do you feel about, Kamala Harris being the first black woman to be president, or trying to be president? Well, frankly, again, I'll revert to my Irish Gaelic. Who gives a shite how you feel about it? So honestly, why as a viewer sitting at home do I give a shite about how you feel about that? First of all, I don't know who you are. Second of all, I don't care if you're Joe Biden. Why do I care how you feel? The question is, how does this undergo intellectual scrutiny? So could you tell us why you support that? Not how do you feel about it? Those are two entirely different worlds of questions. You're constantly being pushed. Anyway, we've got about 10 minutes here, and we got a bunch of stuff to get into. So, sorry, I'm just rambling on, but try to give us a little texture to the whole topic here.
Yeah, no, it's very enlightening. I'll move on here. Trump recognized very early on, obviously, that his enemy and the enemy of the people was fake news, not the media as a whole, but fake news. And within weeks of him assuming power in early 2017, he basically, issued a statement saying that. I think it was on social media. And of course, he was slammed by the legacy media, who said he was demonizing all media, that he was saying that all media, all the press was the enemy of the people. That is not what he said. He came out in early February at the CPAC conference just outside of D.C. to clarify his remarks, and his response actually was quite brilliant. We've got a clip of that. Let's take a listen.
A few days ago, I called the fake news the enemy of the people, and they are. They are the enemy of the people. Because they have no sources, they just make them up when there are none. I saw one story recently where they said 9 people have confirmed. There are no 9 people. I don't believe there was 1 or 2 people. 9 people. And I said, give me a break, because I know the people. I know who they talk to. There were no 9 people, but they say 9 people. And somebody reads it and they think, oh, 9 people, they have 9 sources. They make up sources. They're very dishonest people. In fact, in covering my comments, the dishonest media did not explain that I called the fake news the enemy of the people, the fake news. They dropped off the word fake. And all of a sudden, the story became the media is the enemy. They take the word fake out. And now I'm saying, oh, no, this is no good. But that's the way they are. But I am only against the fake news media or press. Fake. They have to lead that word. I'm against the people that make up stories and make up sources. They shouldn't be allowed to use sources unless they use somebody's name. Let their name be put out there. Let their name be put out. They say that we can't criticize their dishonest coverage because of the First Amendment. You know, they always bring up the First Amendment. And I love the First Amendment. Nobody loves it better than me. Nobody. I mean, who uses it more than I do? But the First Amendment gives all of us, it gives it to me, it gives it to you, it gives it to all Americans, the right to speak our minds freely. It gives you the right and me the right to criticize fake news and criticize it strongly.
All right, yeah, that was really, I love his response. You know, he rightly pointed out that, you know, it's not the media that is the enemy of the people, but the fake news media. And in doing that, though, he illustrated quite brilliantly how compromised most, if not, you know, practically all of the legacy media is, because they're the ones who are screaming from the rooftops that Trump has declared war on the media when that's not what he had done at all.
No, just you, not the media.
Yeah, exactly.
Just you.
Exactly. Those of you who are propagating falsehoods. Exactly.
Right.
And
notice that he's going after the ones propagating falsehood, and in and of itself, what they're saying is a falsehood.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah, it was really a very, very sly, kind of brilliant way to put forth his position there. Also, I thought was interesting, you know, he mentioned in that clip that we saw that he trashed the use of anonymous sources. And again, that's February 2017. What basically sparked the whole Hegseth controversy? The use of anonymous sources, so-called anonymous sources. You know, Hegseth's defenders have been very willing, very happy to put their names to print in order to defend him. His accusers have not been. That abuse of the anonymous source, that is still with us very much today.
Yeah, and there's no pulling back from that. At least not under established jurisprudence when it comes to, you know, defamation against a public official. There's really nowhere you have to go. Although, you know, it's interesting that the Trump campaign did not go after 60 Minutes, has not gone after, is not going after, is a better way to say it, 60 Minutes for defamation against him, because those cases never win. They just don't win. If you're an elected official in America, I mean, somebody could say that the burden of proof on the part of the public official, the politician, is so high that none of them sue because you'll never win. It's so high, you know, established in the 1968 Sullivan v. New York Times case. You can't win. But the approach that they have now is to just say anonymous and get away with it. You can't question them in court. You can't sue. You're never going to find out in discovery. Did they make the whole thing up? Were there really no anonymous sources? There's no way to know. And remember, the Pete Hegseth thing began with them saying, you know, NBC News has 10 former Fox employees who say that, you know, Hegseth is a staggering drunk down the halls and he's awful and he's and all that. But, you know, and then, you know, all the other, not a single name on the record, nobody, zero.
Right.
So, and Hegseth doesn't work at Fox News anymore. So if you know this to be the case, put your name out there and say what it is. But they won't.
Absolutely.
So to be honest, I don't actually think those anonymous sources even exist. Maybe there's one and they just sort of, you know, blew it up and, you know, talked to other people who, I don't know, for whatever reason, maybe agreed with a friend so they wouldn't embarrass them. I don't know. But, you know, really, you've got 10 or 12 anonymous sources and not one of them will go on the record. Sorry, just don't believe it. We're also running out of time here, so go ahead, continue. I know you got some with Jeff Bezos and this too. That the institution of the media is being finally clawed back is a big concern to those on the left.
Yes, absolutely, very much so. I mean, you see it in the plunging ratings for CNN, MSNBC, NBC, and so forth. Interesting too, in the past couple of months, the LA Times, the owner of the LA Times, has basically come out and said he's going to actively begin steering it back toward the center. Washington Post, Jeff Bezos, owner of the Washington Post, refused to come out and endorse any presidential candidate. Of course, it would have been Kamala. But recently, just earlier this month, he gave an interview to a representative of the New York Times in which he basically said, Trump's return, it may not be such a bad thing. He specifically said as well that, we've got to correct this idea in Trump's head that the press is the enemy of the people. Again, that's a mischaracterization. Right. It's the fake news. Okay. But anyway, we've got a clip of him saying this. Let's take a listen.
What about the idea that he thinks that the press is the enemy?
Well, I think I'm going to try to talk him out of that idea. I don't think the press is the enemy. And I don't think, he's also, you've probably grown in the last 8 years. He has too. This is not the case. The press is not the enemy.
I hope you're right.
I hope I'm right too.
Have you talked?
Let's go persuade him of this. No, let's
have you talked to him about it?
But you and I should go. Let's go talk to him.
If we could try.
I really don't. I think that this is absolutely. I don't think he's going to see it the same way.
Okay, yeah, it's either he's being conciliatory toward Trump or extremely naive. The fake news is still very
well.
Much,
yeah, as we said, he owns the Washington Post. I mean, he's got a dog in this fight. So
right.
That doesn't mean he's being insincere. He could simply just be blind. But in either case, he's wrong. You can be wrong for in a number of different categories, but the overall thing is when you go up from the category and go up to the top, you're wrong. He's wrong.
Yep. Right, exactly. And, left and right, I guess principally left, we still see all kinds of examples of rabid Trump derangement syndrome, being broadcast, being printed, etc. Just yesterday, we have a graphic here that I want to bring up. Just yesterday, the Metro newspaper, it's a British newspaper, but the principle, it still holds. They printed a story covering Trump being named Man of the Year by Time Magazine. Okay, so how did they characterize it? Their headline read, "Donald Trump joins exclusive club enjoyed by Hitler, Stalin, Khrushchev, and Khomeini." I mean, that's insanity. That is insanity that's what they chose to go with. It's just, it is laughable.
You've got to imagine these guys are all in England. They're sitting in some pub saying, well, what do you think, mate? How can we say this in the most inglorious light we could possibly paint that little bastard in? I don't know. Oh, wasn't Hitler also man? That's how we'll get it. Just have another pint. That seems to me to be their editorial discussion, honestly.
Yes, it's absurd. And that kind of thing is still happening all over, including in the U.S.
Yeah, it's nuts. So, by the way, Stephen, I'm getting the wrap up here. We're getting close, so I want to get to one other thing very quickly. That the portrayal of Trump is kind of like the portrayal of Superman. What's the name of the movement? America First. And what do we see coming back into all of this, into the discussion? Well, first of all, the recapturing of the media, or largely the recapturing of the media, or at least the diminishment of the legacy media, is all about truth. And you see, and what's the big threat going on to the swamp? You're going to get justice. So you got truth, justice, and America First. Look at this meme. Who does that remind you of? Intentionally. Yep. Truth, justice, and the American way. That seems to be the vision of America that the left, because they're commies, are freaking terrified of. And every one of those categories, they hate the truth, they're all for injustice, and they can't stand America. That is really, if you can kind of sum up one thing, I know there's the cats and the McDonald's and the garbage truck and the everything, but to me, including like he can repel bullets, is that meme. That there he is standing there proudly defending America like Superman and everything that America, at least traditionally, has stood for. He's short on a few things. Obviously, the meme is not the whole story, but it's the juxtaposition. On the one side, oh, he's in the club with Hitler and Stalin, and oh, it's a horrible man. And then over here is the Superman thing. Could you see two more divergent things? You got 30 seconds. Give us your last thoughts, brother.
No, exactly. It just shows the polarization here. Thankfully, I think more and more of us are starting to open our eyes to the Superman, become part of the Superman camp rather than the Hitler, Stalin, Khomeini camp. And I think that we just need to keep doing what we're doing. Those of us at Souls and Liberty, those of us who are online on social media, basically just proclaiming the truth, because as we touched on earlier, truth ultimately will win.
It always wins. It always wins because, as we say here all the time and always point out, what we're talking about when we talk about truth and justice is Jesus Christ himself, who said of himself, I am the truth. So all of that matters. And when he comes back on the last day, he comes back as the judge. That's why we call it Judgment Day. He comes back to hand out justice. I'm not sure that any of us should be particularly looking forward to that day, but die in a state of grace, you should be joyous on that day. Stephen, thanks very much, brother. Got to wrap up and getting the big, heavy wrap here. Thanks very much for being on with us again. Everybody, just remember, you need help and you like what we do here, please, donate to us. Just go to the whatever link is provided there, and we'll keep us on the air, keep us doing what we're doing. Patriotic movement needs to be firmly grounded in correct theology and philosophy, or it too will be subverted. That's what we present here each day on Souls and Liberty. Thank you for joining us. Coming to you from Houston, Texas, I'm Gary Michael Voris. Yeehaw! God love you. See you later.